So a warm welcome to everyone who is joining us this evening for the Landcare Victoria launch of our new Landscape Action Plan Handbook, which is a very exciting moment for Landcare Victoria and a large partnership team who have brought this beautiful publication to life over the last 3 years. So we are celebrating the publication of this fantastic resource that has been built for the Landcare community. And I'm Claire Hetzel, the CEO with Landcare Victoria. So thank you again for giving up your time. I would like to pay my respects to the traditional custodians of the various lands on which we meet and their elders past and present. And this acknowledgement is extended to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people present here today. So just a little bit of housekeeping. This is a webinar, not a Zoom meeting, and it is being recorded tonight so that we can share it with other people who've been unable to attend. Participant microphones will be muted, but you can ask your questions anytime through the Q&A function. So just that little bubble box there with an arrow, click on that and you can type your answers or questions anytime through the presentation, and we will have a Q&A section at the end. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with Landcare Victoria, we are an organisation that represents community landcare. We're an environmental charity and we have over 600 member groups, both landcare and environmental volunteering organisations, who in turn engage tens of thousands of community members. So as the peak body, we enable a grassroots movement that fosters collaboration to regenerate landscapes and address the challenges that we face around climate change, food security, and biodiversity loss. So this Landscape Action Handbook has been created in direct response to the leadership ask of our members, which was held in the 10-year Landcare Plan for Victoria. So this plan calls for the greater support for landscape scale projects, and it also recognises that there are limitations existing in the systems that support landcare, particularly when it comes to catalysing new forms of investment into landscapes and mobilising ways of working that deliver the change we need in the time we have to act. So I do firmly believe that landcare is uniquely placed to meet the challenges of this moment. Landcare is a broad grassroots movement but brings many strengths, and community landcare operates at the local, state, national and global levels. It is place-based and has local reach at a broad scale, and this means that landcare has the on-ground structures in place locally to deliver meaningful change to heal ecosystems while supporting sustainable, globally leading agriculture. We also have landcare at the state and national level to help connect and enable the local system and to support alignment with international frameworks and global requirements. The significance of today's launch is providing a pathway for this local to global action. And so with that, I would like to introduce our presenters. Today we have Anthony Gallagher, and Anthony is now the General Manager at Landcare Victoria, but was the Project Manager for the pilot phase of this program. Sherelle Pollock, and Sherelle is joining us from the National Landcare Network as the new National Landscapes Partnership Manager. And we also have Paul Chattenden, and Paul is the lead and founder of the Landscape Finance Lab, one of the project partners from our pilot program. And I just want to recognise we also have a number of amazing project partners and pilot landscape representatives with us on the panel today. They can all give us a big wave, who'll be available to answer questions at the end of the presentation. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Anthony, who's going to talk us through the pilot program and the beautiful Landscape Action Handbook being launched today.
Thank you, Claire, and it's a pleasure to be here with the support of all our project partners today for what's quite a pivotal moment for Landcare Victoria with the launch of this handbook. So the new features for Victorian Landcare Project was a pilot project designed to enable landscape scale planning and support the landcare community to develop new ways of funding long-term action. So the project was funded by the Ian Potter Foundation, the Natural Resources Conservation Trust and Landcare Victoria, and delivered with our project partners who are here with us on the call today. The participating pilot landscapes undertook a planning and stakeholder engagement process over 9 months to develop a landscape action plan. And I want to give a huge thank you to our 4 participating pilots: Windharp Horizons, the Granite to Goulburn Group, New Futures Kia Wodonga, and Craters to Coast down on the Heytesbury. Without you, we would not be here today launching this handbook. And I think it's fair to say you were sort of guinea pigs in the process, but we're very pleased to have been able to walk along this journey with you. So the project partners refined the methodology for New Futures based on the feedback of our pilot landscapes between 2024 and 2025 to tailor the program to suit the emerging needs of Landcare. The project engaged over 1,300 people throughout, including hundreds across the 4 pilots who developed their 4 landscape action plans. And those landscape action plans collectively cover 1.75 million hectares of Victoria. The handbook is a culmination of this 3-year project. Our pilot landscapes developed a long-term vision using a farm-to-landscape scale approach, which ensures that farmers and landholders are represented in the shared priorities in their landscape. The landscape action plans produced supported participating landscapes to articulate a shared vision. They set targets and they established monitoring protocols to guide their implementation over the long term. While still early in their delivery, these plans are regarded by participants as durable strategic documents capable of guiding their partnerships, their resourcing decisions, and funding investment over many years. And you can find those landscape action plans on our website. The landscape action plans included funded projects. They articulated linkages between stacked interventions, looking at different land management units, and looked at a farm to landscape scale approach. The plans tackle actions across biodiversity, agriculture, water, and community partnerships. The program also looked at building the understanding of our pilot landscapes, at exploring pools of capital and different ways of funding what are the long-term actions that they will have to undertake. And that is looking at what is both available now and what may come about in the future. So today we're really excited to launch the Landscape Action Plan Handbook and talk about the next steps for this landscape planning initiative. The Landscape Action Plan Handbook program requires a number of foundations to enable delivery. It acknowledges bringing the right people together to support the planning process as experts and community leaders. Landcare Victoria recommends an adequate budget to deliver this program, including funding to employ a landscape coordinator, working group honorariums, workshop logistics, a workshop facilitator, expert input, and support for traditional owners to engage in the program, as well as additional resourcing for the plan, design, and publication. The bulk of the program is intended to run over a 6-month period, with 3 months at the start for onboarding and 3 months at the end for the drafting of the Landscape Action Plan, totaling 12 months in total. Each step of the methodology features practical advice, activities, and outcomes to deliver along the way. Additionally, there are areas of specific content for the working group roles and homework to complete in order to build a comprehensive landscape action plan ready to implement following the finalisation of the process. Each step in the handbook includes pro tips, activities that can be delivered, and the next steps that follow the stages of the program so that they can weave together and help those participating on the journey of developing their landscape action plan. The outcomes along the way and at each step will help build the landscape action plan. The handbook also recommends building and monitoring and evaluation into the landscape action plans. It provides a simple mechanism to help track targets and impact across the landscape. Indeed, the evaluation of the New Futures pilot was really valuable, so building in that monitoring and evaluation is really important. Our program evaluation captured both the targets and outputs of the program, but also qualitative information about the significant value that this program provided to participating networks and the contribution it made to building their local capacity. We will be sharing further learnings from that process over 2026, including narratives of the personal and collective change stories that were captured as part of the New Futures pilot. For those wishing to understand the Landscape Action Handbook more or undertake the program, you can find additional resources, templates, and guidance notes on our website. So I'll pass back to Claire to discuss where to next with our program.
Thank you, Anthony. And that's just a small snapshot of some of the deep thinking that has gone into this program and been tested by the landscapes themselves over the 4 pilots. So we will be sharing the QR code, and the resource itself is available on our website. Thank you, Tani, perfectly delivered in the chat. So I guess we wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about looking forward. So what does this mean for Landcare and the opportunities at the local level and at the network level to be able to aggregate the beautiful actions that can happen into these strategic landscape scale visions across time? So ultimately, we have found that this program is a viable method and really hope that it continues to have life in the Landcare system. And Landcare Victoria itself is committed to supporting it in its next phase of delivery. So we'll be supporting local leadership in developing landscape action plans, and we hope to continue supporting replication across the state to build the capacity of Landcare leaders wishing to take this action approach, as well as advocating for the funding and resourcing for Landcare to be able to pick up this process and also to implement the beautiful visions encapsulated in the landscape plans to date. So I'll also ask Sherelle, who is coming to represent the National Landcare Network, to speak a little bit some of the next steps in terms of looking forward at that level. And ultimately, we have roles at both the local network or landscape scale, at the Landcare Victoria level, and across the national and global positions. So Sherelle, over to you.
Thanks, Claire. Hi, everyone. I'm Sherelle at the National Landcare Network. So we're the body that works with the state and territory peak bodies like Landcare Victoria to really drive and support community-led landcare. I'm working on the National Landscapes Investment Initiative, and really that's about what's the next step for this work? How can we take it to the next level? And so that includes working with the investment sector and the finance sector in terms of trying to get those conservation finance flows happening. We've started initially with a website, which we call Project Bank, which has the 4 Landcare Victoria projects on it, and that will evolve and grow over time. And the idea really in terms of having this national level involvement is that you can get that local adaptability. It can be very place-based and community-driven, but also having that national oversight and consistency so that making sure that investors can be assured that what they're getting meets what we're saying we're delivering. So we're also that conduit in terms of national and global that Claire mentioned before, where there's so many different mechanisms now that companies are having to report on both climate and nature. The government is also, through international conventions, having to report on progress related to climate and nature. And so we want to make sure that what's happening at that local landscape level can also be delivering on those needs, and it creates a win-win situation. And we'll also be looking at how do we replicate that model, what do we learn from these initial pilots, and what would we take going forward in terms of that expansion of a program. And I think now I hand to Paul.
Thank you, Sherelle. And Paul, please, we'd love to hear a little bit of the global context in which this plan is landing.
Yeah, thank you, Claire. Hello, Australia. I'm I'm delighted to be dialing in from Vienna, Austria. Apologies if I'm a bit slow. Look, it's been an absolute delight to work with Landcare Victoria on this, and our friends from Regen Farmers Mutual and the Australian National University. We're very proud of this, and we're going to be promoting it globally because we think this is a world-class product. Landscapes are the Swiss Army knife that brings many types of actions together and allows people to set a larger vision and take action to solve that. It's what we need for the challenges we have in the planet at the moment. And this handbook is really important for global work for building landscapes. And it's important for a few different reasons. One is it's beautifully done. It's really clear and simple, and congratulations to the whole team on that. It's been tested in the landscapes, and the feedback from people who actually live and work in landscapes has made it even clearer and simpler. You can feel that as you apply it. Importantly, it builds on a globally consistent framework. The four returns framework, which we now call the landscape framework, is being used across the planet. So you can go from one landscape to another and understand how people are working in Cambodia or in England or in Brazil using this framework. So it's globally transferable. It's not just a local Australian guide, though obviously it's going to be very useful across the whole of Australia. And it's widely applicable. It works in all types of habitats. It works across different industries, across different types of communities and social groups, across catchments. That makes it very valuable. So let's have a look at some of the ways in which landscape planning and the action plan handbook can be used. You can see here a number of use cases for landscape planning. In the Danube River, you've got the ICPDR, the International Commission for Protection of the Danube River, and corporates investing in work across 13 countries, and that's based on landscape planning. Individual subcatchments are doing landscape planning, and we'll promote the action plan there. In the peatlands of Europe, the European Investment Bank we're now working with them to invest in restoring big areas of peatland across Europe. These are the best natural carbon stores in the temperate world by far, and in the tropical world. They've been neglected. They're now being taken to real scale. Consumer goods companies across the world, the Consumer Goods Forum, which represents many of the larger companies, have taken on a landscape approach, and they've got a really big initiative. The Task Force for Nature-Related Finance Disclosure is a very important program that's supporting companies to take nature-based action and remove nature risk. They have landscapes right in the heart of what they do. So watch out for many companies taking much more action at landscape scale, and the handbook will be very useful, a very useful tool for that. We're seeing infrastructure partners across the world. So Network Rail in the UK is using a landscape approach because they can't solve some of the damage that's being done to railways from flooding by using engineering solutions, concrete solutions, and steel. They need to go out to the community and work with restoring the wetlands and the river systems so that they don't flood as dramatically. That's really important. Regenerative agriculture, Nestle, for instance, has a lens network in many countries across the world, a landscape enterprise network that will benefit from this plan. And you're seeing the finance world invest in very large investments. We're working with Mercer on 160 million euro. What's that? About a $20 million fund of funds for landscapes. So they'll invest in other funds that'll invest in landscapes on the ground, hopefully all over the planet. And we'll be promoting the Landscape Action Plan Handbook for these. And there's a set of other use cases as well. I won't go into that. I'll hand back to Claire. But congratulations, everyone who's been involved in this, and we'll be promoting it broadly across the planet. We can all be very proud. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Paul. And I always love hearing those huge $1 million figures talked about in the context of Landscape Scale Plan, and can't wait to be able to see us turn the tap on from the global to the national, to the state, to the landscape, right down to the local, in terms of being able to turbocharge landscape action at this moment in time. So with that, I do want to recognise all the amazing partners who've been part of this journey to date, our brave funders in the Ian Potter Foundation and the Natural Resources Conservation Trust, who backed Landcare Victoria with this ambitious program. To the 4 pilot landscapes, all I can say is you are awesome, and the work that you have done is so inspiring in terms of being able to make tangible the everyday difference that people embedded in place are making across the Landcare system. And the words that you've shared in terms of being able to see your property in a bigger landscape, and that landscape in the context of a 20-year vision, inspire me in the work that we continue to do, supporting you on the ground and taking action. And I want to just recognise that we have had amazing expertise from our partners in ANU Sustainable Farms, and with Wardy and Rowan at the Regen Farmers Mutual, and Paul with the Landscape Finance Lab. Your team have been amazing as well. So just a huge thank you for travelling this journey with us, and we really are proud of the Landscape Action Handbook and hope to be able to work with you in breathing more life into both the investment and implementation sides of the equation. So with that, we will open up to questions from any of the attendees here today, and we really do hope that you can use that QR code or head to our website to download the Landscape Action Plan Handbook, and we do have printed copies for people who want to reach out to Landcare Victoria, and we can post one out to you. They really are worth a look and a read, and I think in terms of what it might mean in your local community. So any questions? I think we've got crickets in terms of people who might have typed one in, but we have a huge, beautiful panel here with Ange and Erin from Sustainable Farms. We've got Rowan Wallace representing the Kiowa Wodonga New Futures program, and Chris from the Craters to Coast Hastbury initiative. I guess I can pop someone on the spot, and I would love to hear Rowan from you in particular, and then Chris, so you've got a little bit of a heads up. If you wanted to share something about your experiences running through one of the second pilot programs that we offered. Just if you pop off your mute button, and you can either share your story or tell me that you don't want to. Thank you, Rob.
I think for us, the unique opportunity that it provided was just such an adventure to explore so many different opportunities, and the development of our roadmap for investment and landscape action was such a journey. The pilot people were so invested in it. We have had so much positive feedback, and it just seems like we've now got the 4 areas that we decided with our groups to explore: the biochar, the beef collective, farm dams, and caring for the Kiowa River, which is the main river that runs through our valley. They all represent opportunities for really circular economy development, and it sort of all interrelates. And I can't wait to see. We've made our prospectus up, and we're launching that only just this week. And so we're really waiting and ready to go with opportunities.
Thank you, Rowan. That was wonderful. Chris, did you want to share a little bit of the experience that you went through as a collective in Creators to Coast?
Yes, thanks, Claire, for the opportunity. Like Rowan, we found that it was a really great opportunity to have a project for our local network. I think that one of the things I've learned in communities is when there's a project that people get behind, it brings the community together, and it doesn't really matter what the project is. If it's something that we can all become enthusiastic about, and we certainly saw that, and our network and the people that were involved in our Futures project have certainly gathered together, and we've had a great time learning. I think that is the second point. The learning curve has been tremendous, and for myself, who's been involved with agriculture forever, I've learned so much, especially around carbon and around markets. And thanks to Wardy and Rowan for, really giving us a great opportunity to learn so much about the marketplace. And, we look now at what our Futures project focused almost specifically on dairy farmers, because that's the majority of our landholders in this region. So we really could have an opportunity to look at the supply chain, and we could look at carbon markets and soil carbon and so on, and having the opportunity to learn so much about those was really good. And I think it probably also gave the opportunity for everyone to know what the real information is and not be misled by some of the misinformation that's about on some of those markets and opportunities. So that was really good. The other thing too was that as we got closer to coming to a vision of what our landscape action plan would look like, we realised that it was so important to do this with partners. This is a huge project, and here we've got Paul talking from Austria. Well, it certainly, we have to be mindful of the global nature of it. So what we see is that we need to have some of our really close relations in the landholder space working with us, and in particularly the CCMA, our local Corangamite Catchment Management Authority. They've been really good so far. I think we can work even better together in the future, and there's some great opportunities. We've already started talking, which is really good, Anthony. You'll be happy to hear. And I say that, there's some good opportunities. To start off with, our nursery that has been limping along. We've had a few grants for some biofunds, and we've got a few local landholders, and every now and then a small corporate order might come in, or CMA might want some. Now we've decided, well, there's no point in waiting for the orders. We've got to actually get out there and produce plants. So we've gone from 20,000 plants last year to 60,000 this year. So our nursery is all ready. And I think if we didn't have that volume of plants, it would be a lot harder for us to appeal to, to landscape actions of the size that are needed to do these projects. And I see that's a really valuable aspect for Landcare networks to consider. The other players are like our West Vic Dairy. They are pushing to make sure that farmers are very aware of the environmental concerns that agriculture has and what they can do on their farms. We've got the the Department of Ag. We've got, in particular for us, our council is very keen to be supportive of us. But I think that if we can bring those together, that's going to be really valuable. So that's one of our focuses. And for the future, I think talking today to one of our CCMA reps, we really look at the future, and we were chatting about Landscape Finance Lab and where does that fit into the picture with us. And I think if we have got a really good, concise prospectus with our Landscape Action Plan behind us, then groups like Landscape Finance Lab can say, look, these are the sort of things out there for that conservation money that's available. So why, we need to be prepared. We can't sit back thinking that money's just going to fall in our hands. But I think that one of the issues we have is to have enough money to be able to coordinate and to get out to landholders to get them starting to think that they would be prepared to put their hand up if there are opportunities to become involved in the whole plan. So very early days yet, done a lot of learning, but we are really excited about the future and quite confident that over time it will fall into place.
Thank you, Chris. That was really lovely to hear some real life examples of what it's meant for you guys. There's a question from Jenny, and Jenny's asking, what was the worst thing that happened? And what are the potential pitfalls? And I guess, Jenny, I could speak a little bit to what I witnessed, which was there was a moment in every single one of these planning processes where there was this stretch that was required and a moment of panic that it was too hard and too much. And you'll see hidden in the Landscape Action Handbook a beautiful pro tip, which is right about now, you might be feeling this and just keep going, trust in the process. And I guess there was the ability for Anthony to be able to help communities understand the deep learning that they were undertaking and to be able to travel that over the life of the program. So I'd say that wasn't necessarily a bad thing, but definitely one that pushed people outside of their everyday comfort zones and did require a different way of seeing and looking at the work that they were doing. And if you can see Rowan as a panelist at the moment, she's holding a bub in her hand. So this was all done amongst the everyday pressures of real humans who have farms, who support their families and communities and are already taking an amazing amount of action to support local land care and their networks more broadly. So I do want to just ask Wardy a question here. So with rising petrol prices currently putting additional pressures on farmers, do you think that landscape planning can help farmers come together to support local needs? Is there some kind of insights you can bring to this moment of time?
Yeah, look, I think when we started in 2024, we thought environmental markets might be a pool of capital most underutilized. And unfortunately, the nature of those were they tended towards bigger landholders and nature repair markets, biodiversity markets are still emerging. By the time we'd finished our 2025 projects, and I'm thinking here particularly of the Heytesbury discovered urea alternatives in green lightning, and Kiwa Wodonga established back then a commercial opportunity around community-owned biochar, bringing in local feedstocks, processing it into biochar, returning it to the farmers as profitability. And so we already saw local economy as a pool of capital be something that farmers could take under their own control and get started with. And that was before Donald and his wisdom clogged up the Strait of Hormuz, and we've now got, diesel prices rising and, potentially just outright shortages, and urea prices rising and outright shortages. And so community-owned electrification, community-owned biodiesel, community-owned nitrogen alternatives, biochar, these are all opportunities that I think going through a landscape action plan and bringing your community and unearthing those pools of capital around those targeted opportunities, I think it's never looked better for that pool of capital. But you can't today, without having gone through the process, know what your land management unit and intervention and pool of capital alignment is going to look like. But if they looked good for biochar in 2025, they look bloody amazing in 2026. And I would reckon that the Kiwa Wodonga group, if there's prospective entrepreneurs out there, there's project ready kind of landscape action plan and the thinking and the willingness and the coordination ready to happen. And if it's something like high input costs that drives landscape adaptation rather than supply chain reporting or environmental market uptake, I think that's just fine because it puts it in the control of the locals. Yeah, and it's achievable.
Thank you, Wardy. Really do appreciate your insights through the whole breadth of this program. I'm conscious, Ange and Erin, that you both travelled the pilot process and brought the amazing knowledge and expertise from ANU Sustainable Farms. Is there anything that you wanted to share in terms of how you saw this process bringing to life either that work or how it might stand out as something really important to what needs to happen moving forward?
Yep. I think it's been really a great project to be involved with for the last few years, and it's been interesting for myself to see, having done both pilot years, the growth and the change, and how much having something like this landscape action plan, which is broad and applicable to a lot of different communities, but then working through it with individuals, seeing how different the outcome can be, even though you've gone through the same process. I think that's been really enlightening and interesting. And I think that speaks to the applicability of this resource that you guys have produced, that it's going to be helpful to a lot of people. I think for us, it's really exciting because we work a lot with farmers and trying to conserve biodiversity on farms at that scale, but being able to scale up and look at entire landscapes and work with people to identify what are the most valuable actions that they could undertake and where can they invest really amplifies that potential impact. And I think that's really exciting for us coming from an ecology and a conservation background. I think that's really how we're going to have large scale impact. And to see that kind of, I don't know, switch in landholders to start thinking at a bigger scale than their own is really exciting to see.
Yeah, I agree with all that Ange has said, and I think something that struck with me from working with the Kiwa Wodonga crew was that sense of community spirit as well, which is such a huge part of Landcare. But I think empowering people and giving people the confidence to think outside the box a little bit and scaling up action is a really powerful tool as well. So yeah, we're really excited to see what happens next and where it all goes.
Just to build on what Erin said, I absolutely agree. And I think that's been one of the most heartening things, is to see these communities that have sat down, taken stock of what they've got, and they've just built this momentum and this energy. And it's really palpable when you're in the room with them. And it's really exciting to see how excited they are about their own plans and that sense of ownership, and having been through that whole lengthy co-design process, which can, drag on, but is so important and gives them that entire connection to it. So it's been really great.
Thank you, Ange and Erin. And I think you speak to one of the 4 returns that is hidden in the Landscape Action Handbook as part of the thinking around why these plans aren't just a biodiversity-focused landscape action approach, but looking at the social, the economic, the environmental, and what is titled inspirational returns. So the thing that's actually going to drive change at a local level, where people understand and see their place in taking action and their ability to be able to contribute either private land to a shared bigger picture agenda with productive returns to them as farmers, and to be able to look forward to the next generations who are going to inherit the landscapes in which they're currently placed. So I do think there's something we've learned a lot about in terms of building that local capacity and agency, but ultimately catalysing something that can travel, whether there's support from Landcare Victoria or any of the project partners moving forward. It is held locally, it has got leadership, and it's embedded within the organisations that are carried through this process. So that's part of what really excites us about this particular approach, and the opportunities to recognise those returns across that social and inspirational system. So I guess there is at least one more partner represented here in terms of the Natural Resources Conservation Trust. And Les, I know this was a significant project for NRCT, and I'm wondering if you wanted to share a little bit of your journey in being able to travel beside us as both a funder and a partner.
Yeah, thanks very much, Claire. And and on behalf of the Natural Resources Conservation Trust, this was actually the first project that NRCT actually funded in conjunction with Ian Potter Foundation. And really, I guess I'll only say a few words on behalf of my organisation, who's an environmental philanthropic charity. We looked for a particular project and looked to Landcare Victoria to deliver this project. And what we were looking for, the name New Futures, is effectively what we were hoping to achieve when we came together over 3 years ago on this project. So by new futures within the local landscapes, what we're hoping to get is landowners who live and work in the local landscapes were coming together as a community through the pilot programs to shape the future of their landscapes. And that's what it really excited us about, because we were looking at local landowners coming together and thinking at a much larger scale than potentially what they had done previously. We wanted an outcome that was replicable, that's able to be utilised, and we've heard already today from Paul and others about how this Landscape Action Plan Handbook is able to be utilised in any landscape across the country and beyond. So the next stage, however, from the Natural Resources Conservation Trust perspective, is what is really exciting, because we've had the 4 pilots go through the programs. They've all developed their landscape action plans. Now we're looking for the next stage where investment comes into those landscapes to deliver on some, and hopefully, ideally all, but some of those, the outcomes that we're hoping to achieve out of each of those pilot landscapes and beyond. So for us, I guess this is the start of the journey, and the landscape action plans encapsulate what 4 pilot land care networks believe are what they need to pursue in conjunction with the local landowners living in those landscapes. So from NRCT's perspective, we're absolutely delighted in how in over 3 years later we've come to the end of that particular funding for this particular project. But what we've been left with is something that's very exciting. The handbook itself, able to be utilised by anyone. It's made freely available, but also the learnings and expertise, not only from within the 4 pilots, but also within Landcare Victoria and my own organisation, and also the partners that have assisted. So I'll just sign off by saying congratulations, I think, to everybody who's participated. And we're really looking forward to see the fruits of the efforts and investments coming into those landscapes in the near future. So thank you, Claire.
Wonderful. Thank you, Les. I've got one question here, Paul, for you, and it may or may not be a simple one, actually, which is the name has changed from the 4 returns framework to the landscape framework. Is there a reason why?
4 returns is one part of the overall framework. So in fact, what we find, 4 returns is the end result. You want to get ecological returns, ecological results or returns, social, financial, and inspirational. That's what we're aiming at as we go through. How to get there? There's a 5-step process, the 5 elements that you can find in the little sustainable landscape handbook. And then there's 3 zones. A very simple system for bringing the spatial management of activities in a landscape together, so that you're focusing equally on the natural areas, regenerative areas that are also productive, and the productive areas. All of that together is the landscape framework. The 4 returns framework is just a shorthand way of talking about that. We've produced a report just recently that captures all of that, so I'll put that in the chat box in case anyone is interested.
Wonderful. Thank you, Paul. Just wondering, is there any last questions? And otherwise, I think we may close for this evening and just share with you a final slide in terms of an opportunity to get in touch and to reach out if there is a Landcare group or network keen to take up the handbook. We are here to support you. If there are partners here who are keen to understand how they can help with this particular approach, we're really keen to work with you. And for anyone who is interested in investing, we have some amazing opportunities ready and available through the first 4 landscape plans already ready on our website. So please do reach out and get in touch. A huge thank you to everyone for attending tonight, to all of our partners, and again, the 4 pilot landscapes. It has been a pleasure and to work with you, and we really look forward to the next steps of this New Futures program. Good night.